Chapter 5 Like Remnants of a Ravaged Army. We lined up outside the chow hall and hoisted boats onto our heads. It was now apparent we would go nowhere without them. As bankers carry their briefcase, as fashion models walk around with their photograph portfolios, we travel around with boats on our head. It's a hell week thing. I have to admit that after the first straight 30 hours, my memory of those 5 days begins to grow a little hazy. Not of the actual events, but of the sequence. When you're moving on 40 hours without sleep, the mind starts playing tricks, causing fleeting thoughts suddenly to become reality. You jerk yourself awake and wonder where the hell you are and why your mom, holding a big juicy New York sirloin, is not pulling the paddle right next to you. It's a forerunner to outright hallucination, kind of a semi-hallucinations. They start slowly and get progressively worse. Mind you, the instructors do their level best to keep you awake. We were given 15 minutes of hard physical training both when we reached the chow hall and when we left. We were sent into the surf fast and often. The water was freezing, and every time we carried our boats, racing through the breakers with the 4 remaining teams, we were ordered to dump the boat, pull that sucker over the top of us, then right it, get back in, and carry on paddling to our destination. The reward for the winners was always rest. That's why we all kept trying so hard. Same for the 4 mile run, during which we got slower, time slipped to below 32-minute standard, and the instructors feigned outrage as if they didn't know we were slowly being battered to hell. By that first Monday evening, we'd been up for 36 hours plus, and we were still going. Most of us ate an early dinner, looking like a group of zombies, and right afterwards we were marched outside to await further orders. I remember that 3 guys had just quit simultaneously, which put us down to 6 officers out of the original 12. Judging by the one guy I knew, I didn't think any of the ones who quit were in much worse shape than they had been 12 hours before. They might have been a bit more tired, but we'd been nothing new, and it was all part of our tried and tested routine, and in my view, they acted in total defiance of the advice handed us by Captain McGuire. They weren't completing each task as it came, living for the day. They had allowed themselves to live in the dread of the pain and anguish to come, and they'd told us never to do that. Just take it hour by hour, forget the future. Keep going until you're secured. You get a guy like that, a legendary U.S. Navy SEAL and a war hero, I think you ought to pay attention to his words. He earned the right to say them. He's giving you his experience. Like Billy Shelton told me, even the merest suggestion. But we had no time to mourn the departure of friends. The instructors marched us down to an area known as the Steel Pier, which used to be the training area for SDV Team 1 before they decamped for Hawaii. It was dark now and the water was very cold, but they ordered us to jump straight in and kept us treading water for 15 minutes. Then they let us back out onto dry land and gave us a fierce period of calisthenics. That warmed us up a bit, but my teeth were chattering almost uncontrollably, and they still ordered us back into the water for another 15 minutes, the very limit of time when guys start to suffer from hypothermia. The next 15 minutes were almost scary. I was so cold I thought I might pass out. There was an ambulance right there in case someone did. But I held on, so did most of us, but another officer climbed out of the water early and quit. He was the best swimmer in the class. That was a stunning blow, both to him and the rest of us. The instructor let him go immediately and just carried out counting off the minutes the rest of us were submerged. When we were finally back on shore, I was really not able to speak, and neither was anyone else. We did some more PT, and then they ordered us back into the water for another period. I forgot how long, maybe 5, 10 minutes, but time ceased to matter, and now the instructors knew we were right on the edge, and they came around with mugs of hot chicken broth. I was shaking so much I could hardly hold the cup. But nothing ever tasted better. I seem to remember someone else quit, but hell, I was almost out of it. I wouldn't have known if Captain McGuire had quit. All I knew was there was half as many still going as there had been at the start of Hell Week. The hour was growing later, and things were not over yet. We still had 5 boats in action, and the instructors reshuffled the crews and ordered us to paddle over to Turner's Field, the eastern extension of the base. There they made us run a long loop, carrying the boat over our heads, and they made us race without it. This was followed by another long period in the water, at the end of which this crew, the end of which this member of the crew, boat 1, tough as nails Texans, I thought, cracked up with what felt like appendicitis. Whatever it was, I was absolutely unreachable. I didn't even know my name, and I had to be taken away by ambulance and revived at the medical center. When I regained consciousness, I got straight out of bed and came back. I would not discuss quitting. I remember the instructors congratulating me on my new warm, dry clothes, then sending me straight back into the surf. Better get wet and sandy just in case you forgot what you were doing. Starting around 0200, we spent the rest of the night running around the base with the goddamn boat on our heads. They released us for breakfast at 0500, and Tuesday proceeded much like Monday. No sleep, freezing cold, and tired to distraction. We completed a 3-mile paddle up to North Island and back, at which time it was late in the evening, and we'd been up for more than 60 hours. The injury list grew longer: cuts, sprains, blisters, bruises, pulled muscles, and maybe 3 cases of pneumonia. We worked through the night, making one long 6-mile paddle, and reported for breakfast again at 0500 on Wednesday. We'd had no sleep for 3 days, but no one else quit. And all through the morning we kept going. Swim, paddle, swim, then run along the beach. We carried the boat to Chow at noon, and then they sent us to go to sleep. We had an hour and 45 minutes in the tent, which gave we had 36 guys left. Trouble was, some of them could not sleep. I was one. The medical staff tried to help the wounded get back to the fray. Tendons and hips seemed to be the main problems, but guys needed muscle stretching exercises to keep them supple for the day ahead. The new shift of instructors turned up and started yelling for everyone to wake up and get back out there. It was like standing in the middle of a graveyard trying to wake the dead. Slowly, it dawned on the sleepers. Their worst nightmare was happening. Someone was driving them forward again. They ordered us into the surf, and somehow we fell, crawled, or stumbled over that sand dune into the freezing water. They gave us 15 minutes of surf torture, exercises in the waves, then ordered us out and told us to hoist the boats back on our heads and make the elephant walk to Chow. They worked us all night, in and out of the surf. They walked us up and down the beach for God knows how many miles. Finally, they let us sleep again. I guess it was about 0400 on Thursday morning. Against many pessimistic forecasts, we all had woke up and carried the boats to breakfast. Then they worked us without mercy, had us racing the boats in a gigantic pool without paddles, just hands, and then swimming them, one crew against the other. Wednesday had run into Thursday, but we were in the final stages of Hell Week, and before us was the fabled around-the-world battle, the last major evolution of the week. We boarded the boats around 1930 and set off, rushing into the surf of the Special Warfare Center and paddling right around the north end of the island and back down San Diego Bay to the amphibious base. No night in my experience has ever lasted longer. Some of the guys were really hallucinating now, and all 3 of the boats had a system where one could sleep while the others paddled. I cannot explain how tired we were. Every light looked like the building dead in our path. Every thought turned into reality. If you thought about home like I did, you thought you were rowing straight into the ranch. The only saving grace was, we were dry. But one guy in our boat was so close to breakdown, he simply toppled into the water, still holding his paddle, still stroking, kicking automatically, and continuing to row the boat. We dragged him out, and he did not seem to understand he just spent 5 minutes in the San Diego Bay. In the end, I think we were all paddling in our sleep. After 3 hours, they summoned us to shore for medical checks and gave us hot soup. After that, we just kept going, until almost 0200 on Friday, when they called us in from the beach with a bullhorn. No one will ever forget that. One of those bastards actually yelled, "Dump boat." It was like taking a kick at a dying man. We kept quiet. Not like earlier response from a student who had earned an everlasting notoriety by yelling back the most insubordinate reply anyone had ever given one of the instructors. Never mind "Hoo-yah, Instructor Pat Stone," because Terry Pat Stone was normally a super guy, always harsh but fair. That particular half-crazed paddler bellowed, "Asshole!" It echoed across the moonlight water, and greeted by a howl of laughter from the night shift instructors. They understood, and never mentioned it. We crashed over the side of the boat into the freezing water, flipped the hull over, and then back, climbed back in, soaking wet of course, and kept paddling. I locked one thought into my brain and kept it there. Everyone else who had ever become a U.S. Navy SEAL completed this, and that's what we're going to do. We finally hauled up to our home beach around 0500 on Friday. Instructor Pat Stone knew we just wanted to hoist the boats and get over to the chow hall, but he was not having that. He made us lift and then lower. Then he made us push him out, feet in the boat. He kept us on the beach for another half an hour before we were loosed up to make the elephant walk to breakfast. Before we rushed, Breakfast was rushed, just a few minutes, and then they had us right out of there, and the morning was filled with the long boat races and a series of terrible workouts in demo pits. That's the scum-laden seawater slime, which we had to traverse in a couple of ropes, invariably falling straight in. To make everything worse, they kept telling us it was Thursday, not Friday, and the entire exercise was conducted under battle conditions, explosions, smoke, barbed wire, while we were crawling, falling into the slime. Finally, Mr. Burns sent out into the surf, all the time telling us how slow we were, how much time there was to accomplish this day, how much more there was to accomplish this day, and how deeply he regretted there was yet no end in sight for Class 226. The water almost froze us to death, but it cleaned us off the slime pits, and after 10 minutes, Chief Taylor ordered us back to the beach. We didn't know whether it was Thursday or Friday. Guys collapsed into the sand. Others just stood there, betraying nothing but the dread in the next few hours. Too many of them were wondering how they could possibly go on, including me. Knees were buckling, joints throbbing. I don't think anyone could stand up without hurting. Mr. Burns stepped forward and shouted, "Okay, guys, let's get right on to the next evolution. A tough one, right? But I think you're up for it." We gave it the world's weakest hoo-yah. Hoarse voices, disembodied sounds. I didn't know who was speaking for me. It sure as hell sounded like someone else. Joe Burns nodded curtly and said, "Actually, guys, there is no other evolution. All of you back to the grinder." But no one believed him. Joe wouldn't lie. He might fool around, but he would not lie. It slowly dawned on us that Hell Week was over. We just stood there, zonked out with pure disbelief. And Lieutenant Ishmael, who was really hurting, croaked, "We made it, guys. Son of a bitch, we made it." I turned to Matt McGraw, and I remember saying, "How the hell did you get here, kid? You're supposed to be in school." But Matt was on the verge of exhaustion. He shook his head and said, thank God, Marcus." I know this sounds crazy if you haven't gone through what we went through, but this was an unforgettable moment. Two guys fell to their knees and wept. Then we all began to hug one another, someone saying, "It's over." Like the remnants of a ravaged army, we helped one another back over the sand dunes, picking up those who fell, supporting those who could barely walk. We reached the bus that would take us back to base, and there, waiting for us, was Captain Joe McGuire, the SEAL's commanding officer, the senior chiefs. Also in attendance was the ex-SEAL governor of Minnesota, Jesse Ventura, who would perform the official ceremony when we returned to the grinder. But right now, all we knew was the baptism by fire that reduced Class 226 by more than half was over. Hadn't beaten 32 of us, and now the torture was completed. In our wildest imaginations, no one had ever dreamed it would be this bad. God had given us justice. We lined up in our sacred blacktop, and Governor Ventura formally pronounced the official words that proclaimed we never had to tackle another Hell Week. "Class 226, you're secured." We gave him a rustling, "Hoo-yah, Governor Ventura." Then Instructor Burns called us to order and said, "Gentlemen, for the rest of your lives there will be setbacks, but they won't affect you like they will affect other people, because you have done something very few have ever called upon to achieve. This week will live with you for all of your lives. None of you will ever forget it. And it means one thing above all else. If you can take Hell Week and beat it, you can do any damn thing in the world." I can't pretend the actual words were accurate in my memory, but the sentiment was precise. Those words signify exactly what Instructor Joe Burns meant and how he said it. It affected us all, deeply. We raised our tired voices, and the shout split the noontime air above the beach in Coronado. "Hoo-yah, Instructor Burns," we bellowed, and we did it, and did we ever mean it. The SEAL commanders in chief stepped forward and took each one of us by hand, saying congratulations, and offering words of encouragement about the future, telling us to be sure and contact their personal teams once we were through. Tell you the truth, it was a bit more of a blur for me. I can't really recall who invited me to join what, but one thing remains clear in my mind. I shook the hand of the great SEAL warrior, Joe McGuire, and he had a warm word for me, and thus far in my life there was no greater honor than that. I'm going to stop here and then finish chapter 5 in a separate video.